Work can be challenging for anyone, but if you have OCD, the workplace can feel like a real minefield. Today, we're exploring how OCD shows up at work and, most importantly, how to not just survive, but thrive despite the challenges that it presents. When I was really struggling with OCD, one of the most challenging things about it was the fact that it was really impacting my work life. I would turn up at work and so often I would be feeling incredibly anxious. That morning before actually arriving at work, I would have spent an enormous amount of time and energy going over my obsessions, trying to have certainty about them. Almost like there was this idea that, if I just think about this enough before I arrive at the workplace, I can figure it all out. I can have that certainty and I won't need to think about it for the rest of the day. But obviously, OCD is a very good liar. It knows exactly how to kind of get us stuck in its trap. And one of the ways it does that is by whispering this kind of big lie in our ear all the time. That if you think about it a little bit more, you can figure it out. And maybe then you'll have a good day at work and it won't be too challenging. You'll be able to overcome those tricky obstacles in your way. You'll be able to deal with those difficult colleagues, or you'll be able to manage the anxiety during that meeting, or you'll be able to do a really good presentation. But so often the OCD likes to come up during these moments and to make them, much more complicated than they need to be. Certainly for myself, looking back at my career before I became a coach, working with people with OCD. I remember one particular occasion actually where I was in a meeting, and before that meeting, I'd been really struggling with a particular obsession that had absolutely taken all of my energy. I'd been thinking about it, pretty much the whole day. And when it came time for that meeting in the afternoon, I was completely burnt out. All of my energy was gone because I'd put it all into trying to figure out that particular obsession to have more certainty about it. And so by the time I arrived at this meeting, I wasn't really as prepared as I would have liked to have been. I didn't have all the resources ready for it. And I was called upon to kind of speak and to actually do something in the meeting, to not just be there. So often these meetings feel like a waste of time. But in this situation, I was called upon to say something. And because I'd spent so much time ruminating during the day, I wasn't able to perform that well. And, when I kind of felt myself, kind of not performing in the way that I wanted, of course, my anxiety went through the roof. There was a sense of perfectionism that was present there that made it even harder. I was getting really angry with myself because I wasn't performing to the level that I wanted. Afterwards, I had to speak to my manager, and he didn't seem that pleased because I didn't seem like I was prepared. For that meeting. And of course I wasn't, because I'd wasted so much time with the OCD. And these are things that can happen, I think, to a lot of people who struggle with anxiety and OCD. If you're not careful, and if you don't, really look out for some of these snares or traps that OCD is so good at kind of getting us into. One of the most common ways that OCD manifests itself is actually through perfectionism. And this goes beyond simply wanting to do a good job. For individuals with OCD, tasks can take significantly longer because there's an overwhelming need for everything to be done just right. Now, you might spend an excessive amount of time rechecking a report, or maybe going over a presentation one more time, trying to make sure that actually it's formatted in that perfect way that you just like. Unchecked, this can lead to missed deadlines, reduced efficiency, and even burnout as you pour all of your energy into perfecting small details, instead of focusing on the bigger picture and just getting things completed, getting things done. Another important area is reassurance seeking. Now, I'm sure you've heard about reassurance seeking and OCD because people talk about it all the time. It's that kind of annoying little voice in your head that is constantly wanting to know that everything's going to be all right, that you haven't made a mistake. And it kind of wants you to go onto Google and start checking things. Or maybe it wants you to ask a colleague, to make sure that you've done something correctly. Another area is reassurance seeking. And this might actually involve repeatedly asking co-workers or supervisors for confirmation that your work is correct, even though on some level you really know that it already is correct. You feel like you need to ask anyway. You might send multiple emails asking for feedback on something that you've already completed, just to ensure that you didn't make a mistake in some way. And while it might feel helpful in the moment, this can actually strain professional relationships and reinforce self-doubt, making it harder for you over time to actually trust in your own abilities. Another problem is hyper-responsibility. And this actually occurs when someone feels an exaggerated sense of accountability for outcomes, even those that are actually beyond their control. So if a team project doesn't go as planned, you might actually blame yourself entirely for that, even if it wasn't your fault at all, even if it was somebody else who clearly wasn't working hard enough. You may actually take on that responsibility and all of the stress that might actually come with that as well. For some, OCD may manifest as avoidance. Certain tasks or situations that trigger anxiety are avoided entirely, which can obviously limit opportunities for growth in the workplace. You might avoid tasks involving shared office equipment due to fears around contamination or decline leadership opportunities because you're fearful of making mistakes, or perhaps you don't want to do presentations on a regular basis in front of people. And this can really result in you feeling, not very confident in yourself, that, you're not able to take on new challenges, or you're not able to do things in the workplace that you would really like to be doing because, your inner critic is kind of telling you, no, you shouldn't do that because your anxiety might come up or the OCD might come up. And then you won't be able to cope with it. And, what are you going to do then? Maybe you're going to struggle even more in your workplace. Another issue is obviously performing compulsions. And as I was talking about earlier, compulsions can end up taking up a lot of your time, your productivity. They take up a lot of energy when you're constantly doing rituals or replaying scenarios or analyzing past interactions. Perhaps you might spend time mentally reviewing a conversation that you had with a colleague to ensure that you didn't say something inappropriate, which can obviously distract you from the task at hand. And this mental effort can be absolutely exhausting and can really cause you to slow down on important tasks or things that you really need to be doing. The important thing is to recognize these behaviors. They may feel like they're helping in the moment, but often, they're not at all. They're kind of keeping us stuck in that OCD cycle, making work much more challenging than it already is. OCD can really make the workplace feel much more stressful than it has to be. But, the right strategies can actually help you to stay in control and focus on what matters. So here are 3 practical tips to help you navigate work with confidence. Tip 1 is to time box your tasks. OCD thrives on making you spend way too much time on small details. Time boxing gives yourself a kind of strict time limit for each task, and it helps you to break that cycle and move through your day more effectively. So how do we apply it? Well, step 1, use a timer or set time limits in your calendar. For example, allocate 15 minutes to write an email or 30 minutes to edit a report. Step 2 then is when the timer ends, it's important to stop actually working on that task, even if it doesn't feel finished in that moment, and remind yourself that meeting deadlines is more important than chasing perfection. Step 3, move on to the next task and resist the urge to revisit unless absolutely necessary. Tip 2 is to use the one and done rule. OCD has a way of pulling you back to recheck or redo tasks, which can actually waste a valuable time. The one and done rule helps you draw a clear line and to actually stick to it. So how do you apply this one? Well, before starting a task, say to yourself, I will complete this once and then I will move on. And after finishing, close the task by saying, it's done. And if doubt arises, write down those doubts, but don't actually act on them. And then finally, review your list of doubts at the end of the day. Often you'll realize that these worries weren't as urgent or necessary as they felt in the moment. And tip 3 is to try to ground yourself with sensory anchors. When intrusive thoughts or compulsions creep in, the temptation is to start fighting with them, to try to push them away. But I think a really important thing to learn to do is to actually try to anchor yourself into the present moment by actually coming into your body. For example, right now, whilst I'm sat in this chair, I can be very aware of my body being supported by the chair. I can notice my feet touching the floor. And by being aware of that, as at the same time as actually speaking to you on the camera, it helps me to feel a bit more grounded, a bit more in my body. So often when we're getting caught up by intrusive thoughts, by compulsions, we're really getting drawn into our heads. And, in OCD, that's the place you don't want to be. You don't want to be stuck there in your head trying to figure everything out. You want to find a way to really get a bit more in touch with your body. So, no matter where you are, no matter what you're doing, you can actually practice this. So if you're out for a walk, try to get a bit more in touch with the movement of your body as you're walking. If you're in a meeting, try to focus on your chair and your body being supported by the chair. Or try to notice your feet and the contact that they have with the floor. You can use the breath to anchor you. You can use different movements to anchor you. You can use conversation even to anchor you. Have a think about all of the things that might be going on around you in any given moment and try to pay a bit more attention to those things. And that will draw you out of your head and bring you a little bit more into your body and into your surroundings. And that's really, what it's all about when it comes to kind of anchoring and trying to be a little bit more in the present moment. Remember, working with OCD can be incredibly difficult at times. I've certainly experienced that myself. But, these 3 tips today can be very, very helpful. Certainly for me, learning to be a bit more in the present, learning to kind of set time limits on my work and learning when to say, well, enough is enough. These things have really helped me to be a bit more present and to let go of things and to stop obsessing so much over that perfectionism that we were talking about at the start. So often with OCD, we just want to think about it one more time, but actually that's a trap. And, the sooner we can let go of that and actually come back into the present moment, the better off we're going to be. So many thanks. I really hope that you enjoyed. Please do subscribe if you found this helpful, and I will see you next time. This video is for educational purposes only and is not a substitute for professional mental health advice, diagnosis, or treatment. If you are dealing with OCD, anxiety, or any mental health concerns, please consult a licensed mental health professional for support.